This is the Tabletalk Podcast, where we bring people together who wouldn't normally meet under normal circumstances to join the conversation on current topics around Emory University's campus and the country. Today, your host is Brennan. He is joined by 3 Emory University students with differing majors and academic interests. Together, they will discuss their differing paths and see if they can find some common ground. Let's get started.
All right. I'm Brennan. I realized I neglected to say that off the top of the last podcast, but I'll be hosting the Tabletalk Podcast here today. Our topic today is pre-med in humanities, and I'd like each one of you to just say your name and maybe what perspective you're hoping to offer today.
Hi, my name's Diane. I'm a sophomore in the college. I guess just like generally discussing the pre-med track and like the ups and downs and like struggles.
Hi, I'm JC. I guess I'll be representing the humanities. I'm hoping to major in philosophy, but still trying to figure it out. And I hope to offer a perspective as someone who is very indecisive about what to major in and what to choose.
I'm Callan. I'm a freshman in the college, and I'm offering the perspective of somebody who really has no idea what they want to major in.
Cool. So, first off, what are your majors and why did you pick them? And if you're maybe undecided, what are you thinking about and why are you thinking about that?
I'm a biology major and a Spanish minor. I think I chose biology as more of a like ongoing thing. So like I came into the college knowing I had an interest in like biology, but I wasn't exactly sure if I wanted to major in that or like something related to biology. But I'd basically say probably Gen Bio definitely like sealed my love for the major just because I like really enjoyed the class and like participation in class and all that type of stuff. And then Spanish was more so an ongoing thing since elementary school just because the school I went to, like that was the language that everyone learned, and so I just kept on continuing on with it, and I've always wanted to learn more about it.
Cool. So yeah, I'm majoring in philosophy, or at least planning to do so. When I came into college, I really had no intention of majoring in a humanity. I was looking at computer science, business, more of the technical routes. But freshman year, I took a philosophy class with an incredible professor, and he kind of opened me up to the world of philosophy and what it can do for you. And really how interesting it is that most of the ideas that we have today come from ideas that were born literally centuries ago. So that's really why I'm interested in philosophy, and I think it's a really valuable thing to learn.
I've never really had any idea what I wanted to study, which is kind of why I came to Emory, because it has such a strong focus on the liberal arts and exploring and figuring out what you want to do. So I'm kind of leaning toward neuroscience right now, but just because pre-med is such a big thing here, and I feel like everybody I know is doing pre-med or some sort of STEM major. But that's really tentative, and I honestly just have no idea what I want to do, and I'm hoping to figure that out through like the GERs.
You thought about neuroscience for a minute, didn't you, JC?
Yeah, I was thinking about it for a while, but then I started taking biology and chemistry, and I realized that, you know, even though Emory is a liberal arts school, it's very much a science school and very much a research school. And with that regard, they make intro to bio and intro to chem very rigorous.
Yeah.
Sort of like trying to weed out the kids who aren't interested in, pursuing a further path in science.
Right.
So it made it very difficult to do well in them, even with a strong interest.
Fair enough. What would you guys say are some stereotypes you know about the path you're taking?
I guess the common one is like people think they have to, I don't know, like rack up their activities list or, and that could just be like in terms of like research or clinical experience, or that they always have to get like an A in the class or things like that. So in terms of general stereotypes, I think it's in a lot of things. One is like what you have to like rack up your activities list. Two is like you have to like always get an A in like the prerequisites. Another one too could just be what am I thinking of? I'll come back to that. It's on my mind. But elaborating off of like always getting an A, like people are taking like really hard courses. So like I feel like when you're applying to these schools, like I obviously can't speak for them, but like if they see that you like performed well, whether that was like a B plus or whatever, I think that like speaks for itself. And then also for like what you do, it's not more so about like how much you do, but like the quality that you give to that like one certain thing. So maybe you only did like one or two things, but like you were so involved and you can speak from that and you can be like, you know, this changed me in X, Y, and Z. I learned X, Y, and Z. Like I think that's more important than just having like a list of things that you can be like, oh, I did this, that, and that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I feel like the tendency is to rack up as many activities as you can, but I think it's better to specialize in one of them and kind of exhibit some interest in it and do really well in it. As far as like stereotypes with philosophy, I think the number one stereotype is that you won't get a job, and I think that could be true to an extent. Philosophy and many of the humanities are different in that sense, where like there's no direct career path. Whereas with pre-med, you know, you're going to be a doctor. Pre-law, you'll be a lawyer, etc. But I feel like the focus of the humanities is less so on gaining technical skills and finding a career, and more so on broadening your academic spectrum and like gaining certain skills such as writing, articulating, speaking, reading. And that's personally why I like philosophy. Yeah.
I definitely see both of the stereotypes, like especially in regards to philosophy majors. Like they get a lot of flack, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't really know that there are stereotypes about undecided people, especially like not at Emory, because I don't think there are that many undecided people here. But I guess that like we're wishy-washy or like not that academically driven because we haven't decided on anything in particular. But I think in general, it's not that big of a population. There aren't that many stereotypes about them.
Do you think that it's odd that there's not a lot of people who are undecided?
I think that a lot of people come into Emory like with a very set plan, especially like with pre-med and pre-business being so huge, but those plans quickly fall apart. So like there's not a huge initial undecided population, but people like quickly realize that what they thought they were going to do is not what they want to do. So there's a larger like group of undecided people along the line.
And adding on to your question, I think like some people like decide to choose something just because they're afraid of not having something to be like, oh, I'm majoring in this, which is like totally okay because you're still like trying to figure out what you want to do. But I more so think it's like a thing of comfort that they can hold on to, even though they're still not exactly sure.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, I definitely felt like that.
Yeah, actually going off that, the next question is, have you ever thought about doing a major different to the one you're currently on, and what was that like?
For me, I'd say, I wouldn't concretely say yes or no. I'd say it was in between just because I knew I really had an interest in the science, but I wasn't dead set on choosing just biology. Like, I was considering other things. And so more so freshman year was like while I was taking like general prerequisites like chem and bio, it was more so just like focusing on those, and I wasn't really thinking about like what major I should declare like right away or anything like that. It was just more so like focusing on getting good grades in those classes and like transitioning to college. But I will say like I always keep an open mind. Like even though I'm pre-med, I don't like turn down other opportunities just because I've defined myself as pre-med. Like if something comes along that's totally not medical related, I'm just going to give it like 100% consideration.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely like the whole point of coming to a liberal arts school is that even though you choose a major or you choose a path that you're looking to take, you're still open to learning new things from all areas. Me, I've been switching around so much, I can't decide. I've jumped around from computer science to business to neuroscience, and somehow I'm sort of ending up at philosophy. And I think that just comes from mostly me thinking about careers. And I think that the biggest difference for me when deciding philosophy was that I wanted to focus more on what were the skills I was looking to learn in college versus like what career did I want necessarily, because I don't think I can decide right now like what career I'm looking at.
I've also like kind of jumped around between different majors, but I've never like settled on anything in particular. Like right now, I'm just trying to do the pre-med prerequisites just in case that's what I want to like do eventually. But that's that's just something I'm considering, and I just want to keep that option open. Like I've also considered playwriting as a major. I've thought like briefly about majoring in Spanish because I've been studying that for a while, but I'm not really interested in that either. So I've just there've been a lot of different things I've considered, but I've never like latched onto any of them.
The next question is, are there any negatives you've experienced as a result of your major?
I think for me, so I actually had an interaction with my philosophy professor, and he told me that I should not major in philosophy, which is a weird thing for a philosophy professor to tell a student who's interested in majoring in it. And he told me not to major in it because the department tends to be more political in nature. And I feel like that's one of the downsides of the humanities at the moment, is that they're all becoming more modernized. And I think that goes along with integrating into political ideology. And I think that's probably the most negative thing about the humanities and especially philosophy at the moment.
I think a negative thing about being undecided is that it's really hard to like find common ground with other students, because a lot of people define themselves like by their major. Like there are a ton of pre-med groups and pre-business groups, but if you're undecided, it's hard to get involved with those because you don't really necessarily align with everybody involved in those. So that's been I guess a bit of an issue with being undecided.
I would say, because now is like the year I started getting into like my upper levels and stuff. So freshman year, you have like a lot of like freshmen who are also taking your courses. So you know a lot of people in those classes, and like you like form study groups and support groups and all that type of stuff. But like as you get into the upper level, now everyone's like focusing on what they want to do. So it's like a small like group of people than what you were used to before, which like is still fine, but it's definitely different because you were just used to having so many more people to like, you know, rely on and support one another like in the whole path. And now you're more so like on your own, independent.
Next thing I want to ask is, how many hours of homework would you say you have to do, or you know, what kind of homework is required for your major?
I'd say it just depends on the week. Like if I have a lot of assignments, I feel like I'm constantly doing something like throughout the day. Like let's say I have like an exam coming up in human physiology. Then like every night, like 5 days before, I'm probably like reviewing a good like 3 or 4 lecture slides just like leading up to it. And mainly that's just like self-study, going through the PowerPoints, but since it's dense material, like that could take like, I don't know, like an hour to an hour and a half per that like one lecture slide. So that would be like 3-4 hours just dedicated to that. But like if it's a week where there's not much going on and it's more so just like keeping up with the material, then maybe it's like an hour-ish just like reviewing like my notes for that specific class and then like other classes.
I'm currently in 3 classes. I'm in biology, chemistry, and 1 philosophy class. And the work between all 3 of them is vastly different. The sciences are pretty hard to study for. It requires a much different style of personal study. I think it requires a lot more textbook reading, a lot more memorization of certain axioms and facts that build upon everything else. Whereas philosophy, I feel like certainly more contemplation, certainly more reading, certainly more writing. And I think philosophy deals a lot more with language, whereas I feel like the sciences deal a lot more with evidence and experience. And I think for me that was the biggest tell sign that I was not interested in doing a science major anymore, was I didn't really like the type of work. It required lots of hours of studying and lots of very intense working on problem sets and such. Whereas philosophy, I found I could be more creative and more interested in the language itself.
I've definitely found that, like the difference between STEM and humanities courses in the assignments. Like with an essay, it's much more interpretive, whereas in biology, you're more just learning information. You don't really get the chance to personalize that.
Yeah, and that's why I like philosophy a lot. I think I like language a lot more than I like equations, let's say, or relationships. And I feel like that's what science deals with, a lot of correlation, a lot of causation, whereas I feel like philosophy is thinking about how do we design those experiments to find correlation and causation.
Next, I wanted to ask, what are the opportunities you've had offered to you by or through your majors? So whether it's maybe an internship, labs, maybe for a freshman you might not have had any of that yet, but just curious what you guys have.
As a freshman, when I came into the college, I signed up for this program. It's called like STEM Partners. And two professors, one was Dr. Brew in the biology department and the other Dr. Sori in chemistry. They were involved with I want to say maybe let's say around 40-ish freshman students who are taking bio and chem together year one. And it was basically like this cohort where you had monthly meetings and you basically just discuss general STEM opportunities and how your progress is throughout the semester and stuff like that. So that was pretty nice to have year one, just because you met other people in the same boat, and it just helped you move on through. And then I'd say after my first year of bio, I liked it so much that the professor I had, Dr. Brew, I asked him if I could TA for him, which I now do. But I like that a lot because it's just I can continuously be engaged with the subject and help other students also transition into Gen Bio, because most of them are freshmen, so I feel I can give them advice from my past experience last year. And then in terms of research, I haven't done that yet. I'm looking to get into it, but I was more so holding off on that for a while, and then I just found other things, so.
The only opportunity I've seen with regards to philosophy specifically is the Philosophy Club, which is a pretty cool club. My professor actually started it, and it meets once a week. They just do general discussions on basic philosophical topics like free will. Sometimes they'll look at ancient texts, but it's definitely just a big discussion. I haven't attended too many of them, but it's definitely a cool opportunity for philosophy students to get engaged and to be engaged in discussions.
So do you think that there would be less opportunities for humanities majors then than STEM majors?
Yeah, I think so. I think especially at Emory, just because it's such a STEM and research-focused school. For instance, in bio right now, I'm also in bio lab, and they're always sending out emails of research opportunities, study abroad opportunities, whereas I don't really see that much with philosophy. I think that could have something to do with funding. Could also just have something to do with plain interest, because obviously there's more interest in the pre-med and the sciences here at Emory. Yeah.
On the flip side of that, actually, I was thinking, on one hand, it appears pre-med tracks have more internships and such, but at the same time, at least for intro classes, they're very big, and you don't really get to know the professor from what I've heard. So how has that been in your experience? How big have your classes been, and what relationships have you been able to make with professors?
Yeah, for me, that's why I really wanted to switch out of the sciences, actually. In both bio and chemistry, I was assigned a number to put on all of my tests and exams, and it was such a weird feeling. I put my name, obviously, as well, but being assigned a number, in biology, I'm number 89. And that just goes to show that the class is so big that they need, numbers to be able to organize the students. Whereas in my philosophy class, there's 15, 16 students, and we all kind of know each other. Even though it's not a discussion-based class, there's still more interpersonal connection with the professor. He can look everybody in the eye, and he also reads everyone's paper and gives unique feedback. So I wasn't really seeing that in the sciences.
As a freshman, I'm in like a lot of intro classes, so I think it's really difficult to get to know professors in your first year. Um, I've actually had the most meaningful interactions with my professors in like my bio lab, where it's a TA who teaches that class, but it's a much smaller group than most of my other classes, so I have a more direct relationship with the person who teaches that. Whereas in like my economics class, I've never spoken to the professor.
Yeah, I'd say it definitely depends. Like from my personal experience, going back off of what you said, like in comparison to your philosophy class, my current Spanish class is pretty small. So like our professor will call us by name, and you basically know everyone in your class. But then, I guess relating back to last year, in my general biology class, you really only know the professor if you make an effort to know the professor. So, like, I knew my professor because I went to office hours, but, like, sometimes you don't have time to or you just have conflicts, so it's harder to, like, develop a relationship. And then in terms of my chemistry class just happened to be a small class, and our professor, like, made an effort to know us by name, so that was nice. But then you also have these classes that are super huge, and at the same time, you won't know them unless, you go to office hours or something.
I also wanted to ask, what's the best class you've taken at Emory, and why is that?
My favorite class so far is the philosophy class I'm in right now, Ancient Greek and Medieval Philosophy. And I find it fascinating because we've read everyone from the pre-Socratics, so basically the first like documented thinkers, all the way up to some of the medieval people. So through Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates, all the way to, St. Anselm, St. Augustine, some of the more religious philosophers. But it's my favorite class because I realize how close of a connection philosophy has to science, actually. And I most notably found it interesting that Aristotle is called the father of biology. And I was like, how can that be possible? Like, he's not a scientist. And when he was a thinker, there was really no scientific knowledge at all. But now we realize that most of what he was saying about like the nature of existence has a lot to do with the way that biology is set up now. And so I just think in that regard, it's been my favorite class, kind of learning about how science progressed from just pure discussion and ideas into different fields and different areas that we study quantitatively.
I guess I'll give two, one in STEM and then one non-STEM. My favorite non-STEM was for my Spanish minor requirement, and that was Spanish 212, which is basically like the transition between like the beginners and then like the upper levels. So you read like a lot of short stories and like go over grammar and stuff. But I think I liked that a lot just because the short stories we read, they were just on like various like themes like love, family, like just various things. But the way like our professor discussed the stories, because you would read it and then you discuss it in class, we just had like really good class discussions, and I felt like it like deepened my understanding of the culture, even if we weren't like directly learning about something within Spanish culture, but I felt like I was acquiring like more knowledge about the language in general. And then in terms of STEM, I think I would say first semester of biology, just because like it was nice to see like like the payoff, but at the same time, since it was a transition to like a college science course, what was I gonna say? I lost it. Yeah, since it was a transition to college science course, like you had to change your thinking, which was kind of like going out of your comfort zone. But I think it just prepared me to look at things from like a different like critical level. So
I'm actually in Spanish 212 right now, and I definitely understand what you're saying about it being like it's such a discussion-based class, and you speak in Spanish the whole time, which I've never done before. So you really build like a community in that classroom, and you really get to know everybody else and their opinions about the stories that you're reading. So I think that's been a really good experience.
What are some of your guys' favorite like discussions that you've had, like topics rather?
I remember we read this story that was like about this girl who was like heartbroken over like her ex-boyfriend because
Malibu.
yes, because he like moved on with someone else, and like the discussion was pretty interesting because like I think our teacher was trying to relate it to like college love life and like relate to us, but it was interesting because at the end of this discussion we came to the conclusion that like he moved on, but he was still like in love with her. It was just like he decided to date someone else as like almost like a jealousy move, or for her to think like, hey, like I'm out here, but like not like to like rub it in her face, but that was his way of coping with it. So like I thought that was interesting because like I didn't initially interpret the story like that, but like after discussion I was like, oh wait, the evidence is all here. I could like see it like that, you know?
Yeah, in that class, we like really build collective interpretations of the stories. Like, it's through discussion that like we have a better understanding of them. I think that's a big component of that class, and maybe like humanities as a whole.
Finally, what's an area or subject that you've never looked into, but you think you might like to before you graduate?
I think for me, it's probably religion. I find it super interesting. If you learn anything about philosophy, you start to realize that most of like philosophical discussions can hardly be had without some component of an immortal being or some type of God. And I've always found that weird because philosophy is this rigid, it's almost like a science, I think. You know, it's built in logic, it's built in the applications of language, but we almost like can't discuss anything philosophically without some type of religious component. So I'd love to learn more about the history of religion and how religion plays into philosophy and just the humanities in general.
For me, I'd say African American studies as well as the social sciences. In terms of African American studies, I took a class like my senior year of high school, and I thought that was really interesting just because like we're always used to learning like U.S. history from like a specific perspective, but in my class it was basically like the all-encompassing like from Africa then to like the Americas and like other places around the world. But I thought that was pretty interesting just because I never gotten like that perspective of history before. And it just kind of shows that like we hide or like we choose to teach history that like we want to convey a certain message, but then we're leaving out this like huge gap that's also out there. And not only with African American studies, but like other history classes that relate to like different ethnicities, like you see the same trend. So I definitely want to continue that just to like continue the discussion from like where I left off. And then the social sciences, I've never really been exposed to them before. But everyone always talks great things about them, especially like sociology and psych. So there's those are courses I want to take at some point here.
There's like a wealth of things I still want to explore, especially having only been here a semester. I want to take classes in creative writing, sociology, psychology. I want to take physics at some point. I feel like I still have so much time here that I don't want to limit myself in what I want to study. So I really just want to explore everything.
I'm just curious, why do you want to take physics?
Because I hated physics in high school.
Why'd you hate it?
I had a teacher who I didn't enjoy, and I think that I might actually like physics now if I take it in a different setting.
Yeah, I think especially with physics, like a teacher can really make or break the experience.
Yeah.
Because it's a very difficult subject. I had a really good physics teacher in high school, and I took it for 2 years, and he just kind of opened me up to, honestly, like how little we know about physics. And sort of like the transition from classical physics to quantum physics and more of a study of physics at the microscopic level. I would love to take physics, but I feel like it would be very hard here.
Yeah.
Before we finish, do you guys have any questions for each other? That maybe any open ends you've heard them discuss or anything that you're interested in about their track?
Yeah, I'm interested in how you guys think... how do you guys think people, especially at Emory, choose their major? Do you think people are looking more towards, like, careers when they're choosing majors? Are they looking more towards, like, wealth outcome? Or do you think they're looking more towards just information and interests and skills? Because I'm kind of confused as to how people choose majors.
I've always considered it to be a career-focused process, so I was actually really surprised when you talked about how you were interested in philosophy because of the skills it teaches you. I thought that was actually really interesting. But I've always directly associated major with job.
I have too, and I've always felt like, especially in a liberal arts sense, I always felt like that was not the wrong approach, but I always felt like it was a skewed approach.
It's one of many approaches.
Right. But I feel like, in today's day and age, it's very, very practical to think about your major as leading to a career, because obviously the price of college is out the roof, and it's only going up in the future.
Yeah.
And I think people are really concerned with return on investment, and just what they're going to be doing when they get out. And I think majoring in something that does give you a career is it's playing it safe, for sure.
I think it's all of what you guys have mentioned, as well as pressure, whether that's indirect peer pressure because all your friends are one certain path and you're thinking something different, so you're I don't know, no one's doing this. And then also just pressure from it could be family, but I guess I would say mostly family, because a lot of people will value what their parents are telling them. If their parents are oh, I want you to pick the typical doctor, lawyer, X, Y, and Z, then it's hard for them to come back and tell them, hey, I actually want to do this, if it's something their parents haven't talked to them about.
Have you guys had pressures from your parents about choosing a major or career path or anything?
I have not, which I'm glad about. My parents are mainly just take a bunch of things and figure out what you want to do, and then if you whatever you pick, make sure you it's something you like and that you can do well, just so you can see your payoff and success with that. But all throughout growing up, they've more so been do well, we're here for you, we're your support system, but don't feel pressured to pick something because of us.
Cool.
My parents are very supportive like that, but they definitely have told me to pick a major that will get me a career, and not something I've been specifically told not to major in creative writing because that's just a difficult field to get work in. So they're definitely wanting me to get that return on investment. What do your parents think if you majored in philosophy?
Yeah, I have a very similar experience as your parents. My parents have always pushed me to do something career focused. My dad works in business, and so he was always been trying to push me to do the business school. But I don't know, I started thinking really a lot about what is a major and what does it do for you. And one of the things I think about most is, if you go on LinkedIn and you browse around, you'll see that there are so many people in jobs that really don't correlate with their major at all. Especially in business, you'll see a lot of psych majors, a lot of biology majors, just a whole range of different majors. And so I've always thought it was a little, weird to suggest that the major that you choose is directly correlated to what your career outcome will be. Something I've always struggled with, because I do think it's a big correlation. There are a lot of jobs where you have to major in a certain thing to get the job, but I don't know, I've been more focused on, what are the skills I'm trying to learn. And I think that if you're interested in creative writing, you should go for it. Because I think if that's a skill that you think is valuable to you, then I think other people will find it valuable, especially if you can hone in on it and really develop it as a skill. I think that will be really beneficial for you. Are you still feeling pressured from your parents about not wanting to major in what you want to?
I mean, I think that I can major in what I want to, but I also would have to do a double major in that instance for something that would be a safe career choice.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of pressure to do a double major for me as well. My dad thinks I should pair philosophy with something quantitative like statistics or math or computer science. What do you guys think about double majors? Because I think especially at Emory, there's a lot of people who are double majoring.
I'd say double major if those are two interests that you really have and you want to do. But also I don't see a problem like if there's one like whatever major you choose and like you have an interest in other things but maybe you don't want to pursue like a course of studying them, then at the same time I don't see a problem with just like majoring in that one thing. I think more so you'll make up for it in other areas. Like if the argument is like, oh, you have so much time, like why aren't you picking up a second major? Well, maybe they're like experiencing other things outside of the classroom that would be the time they would dedicate to that second major. Or if they're not, like at least they still have this like one interest that they're dedicating themselves like to totally like academically. So
I see double majoring as the most economically efficient thing that I can do with my time here, just because it's so expensive that if I can do a double major without it costing me anything but more time, I should go for it.
Yeah. Do you guys see, like, is there any specific way that people should pair majors? So, for instance, is it okay to do a major in biology and then also pair that with something like religion? Or do you think it's more beneficial to do, like, biology and chemistry, or biology and neuroscience, or biology and psychology?
I love to hear people's weird double major combinations. 'Cause, like, especially at Emory, there's a really broad scope. So I don't think there's anything in particular that you should do. I think it's really interesting to see what passions people choose to pursue and how those are often very different.
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. I think going off of that, it's probably worse for a person to do like bio and chem if they think like, oh, that looks super good, versus like bio and religion is more so what they're like geared towards, because it should be all about what you like, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's honestly my biggest issue with Emory, is that I feel like a lot of kids are too focused on choosing the majors and the careers that they're, quote, supposed to, versus the ones that they're actually interested in. And I really think college is like a place where you're supposed to figure out what your strengths are and then really hone in on them. So, you know, for instance, if your strength is like writing, I think that's a skill that you should hone in on, and not be so worried about, you know, what's the major that's going to look better, or what's the major that's going to like get you the most career outcomes. So I think in that regard, a lot of students, and I don't think it's just Emory, but I think a lot of students today are too focused on career outcomes. But like I said before, it's a very rational thing to be concerned with what career is going to come about from this extremely expensive education.
Yeah. That was a great conversation. I thought it was really productive.
Same.
I enjoyed listening to it a lot. And thanks for being here, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.